Hello, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode of One Vision, the FinTech Fuse. Today, we have not one, not two, not three, but four guests with us on the show. Hello, Pam, Julie, Tammy, and Millicent. Welcome to our show, the FinTech Supper Club, I think we're going to call this.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi. Great to be here.
So for those who didn't dial in and join us for the first FinTech Supper Club, this was a sort of impromptu thing. A few of us started getting together for dinners after Finovate. And we thought, well, maybe we should just get together and chat in between the shows. So we're not just, limited to talking after the FinTech conferences. But for some of you who will be joining us, we will be in San Diego. And Julie, you'll be there and I'll be there. And so will a few of us. Tiffany, who's not with us today, but she'll also be at the show in San Diego. So do join us in May. And I might actually have some copies of my new book that we'll have available for book signing and giveaway. All right, so let's jump right in. Every day I want to say, what a day, what a week. And every day is a new day, a new week, a new low, a new level of, I don't even know how to call this. All right, round robin updates. Anyone has anything interesting to share? I know you all do. Pam, start with you.
Yeah, I think the shocking, maybe not shocking news of Klarna going to IPO, then psych, IP no. Is that funny, guys? Is that
IP
funny?
no? Yeah.
I like it. I love
For a
that.
while, I'm not gonna lie. Really a huge red flag and signal on the current state of the market. Obviously, they don't want to go live in public in a tanking market. Bad signaling for investors, because if they can't have companies that they've invested in IPO, then what's the exit? When is the exit? Bad signaling to investors and funds because of the same exact reason. And then for those who don't know me, I work at a strategic fintech investment fund. We specifically do invest in bank enabling fintechs, but nonetheless are investing in this market. So just to see that, one of the very hyped up IPOs that was supposed to happen this year isn't happening, and may happen next year, may happen who knows when. But just to watch that kind of explode in live real time was not reassuring, did not feel great. I'm sure you guys all saw all of your LinkedIn news feeds kind of blow up with this news as the day went on. I think in the morning it was, oh, look, this exciting thing is going to happen today. And then I saw so many people post, redacted, this is actually not happening, updates, live updates. So I really just didn't feel great about that. And I'm sure you guys all had to kind of like oh no, it actually is as bad as it's looking. So I think just watching the market go slowly downward over the last 3 business days made me wish there was a real life supper club going on right now. I think we could all use a market is thinking hug. But anybody else have any kind of feelings about what happened in Klarna? I would more than love to hear what you guys think. Do we think it's going to happen sometime later this year? Do we think it's all, big major fintech IPOs will be on a pause? I guess, what is your guys' read of the market?
Julie, what do you think?
I mean, it's so hard to say because how many days into this new tariff situation that is the root cause, or perhaps one of the root causes of all of this. But I will agree about, the frustration of this. I was just telling our conference producer, Katie, last week, she contacted me because she's currently planning out what to put on stage at Finovate Fall. And I was like, oh, talk about FinTech spring, things are thawing out. Investors are, they have a bigger appetite now. Companies are more willing to spend money. This is great. I showed her Klarna's IPO, eToro's IPO. I was like, it's going to be the year for FinTech. And this morning I had to email her and I was like, maybe not the spring or the thaw, like put it on ice for now. We are currently still frozen here in FinTech. So I'm not sure what will be on the agenda at Finovate Fall. But we'll find out. It's hard to know what to put on stage when things are so volatile, but that's kind of, the point of conferences is you have to figure it out as you go. That, yeah, it's frustrating.
I wanted
I
to
think
laugh. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think I saw something this past weekend that this like pollen levels across the U.S. were like extremely high, like record high. So like, is it like the great pollinating? I'm just making these really bad fintech jokes. So like fintech spring, the great pollinating of like everybody's just not feeling great. I don't know.
The allergy season.
Allergy and the
Allergies.
sneezes. Yes, the oh,
Yes,
you know, the
I thought
fintech
it was
allergy.
interesting.
We should do that, Julie. We should tell Katie, because I was going to say Katie just emailed me and asked me what are my thoughts about Finove fall agenda,
She
and I'm
sent me
like,
that email
oh,
too.
we need
I
to,
think we should have just invited her and had her be part of this conversation because she also asked me.
right? Exactly. We should just do. Well, actually, we should just send her this episode. Like, here you go, Katie. This is our thoughts. Allergy season is going to be extended until the fall. Um, I just had two conversations this morning actually with people in Europe, and they asked me the same thing, Julie. They were like, we wanted to expand to the US, but we don't think this might be a good time. Should we wait? Should we stay in Europe? Are we going to stay in London?" And I'm like, yeah, on that thought, stay in London at least for a little while longer.
Yeah.
We don't know exactly what's going to happen. We might actually just be too distracted at the current moment to do anything substantial and interesting, especially not when you like look in your 401k and you realize, oh my God, all right, maybe I need to work another 10 years. So God knows. But here's the truth.
I don't think, oh,
No, go ahead. Listen.
I was just going to say, Theodore, I think you're absolutely right. And I don't think people should take that lightly because, I mean, with all this talk about deregulating the industry, it's easy for people to say that that's going to happen. But think about all the banks of all sizes, all the number of years and effort they put in putting in processes, um, like roles, people into just trying to be compliant with all the regulations up to now. It's not like they're going to undo that just because someone is saying, or there's this notion out, now we're going to be deregulated. And I think it's really what's interesting is I sit on a few boards of some banks. Um, the regardless of the geography of banks, um, commercial banking customers, at least, they're increasingly splitting their financial activities between traditional banks and then either local community banks or specialized fintech platforms that integrate seamlessly. And I guess what I'm saying is it's really going to be hard for fintechs, for customers, for banks to actually do anything until we figure out what this deregulation means. So I'm glad you told that person about that's thinking about expanding to the US to probably slow it down because it's really an uncertain time and it feels too risky.
It does. That's literally what I told them. I said it's very risky, especially as a startup that's thinking about scaling up.
Yes.
You need some sort of a semi-stable environment to walk into. You will already have enough of variables. You don't need more. And these are things you can't control, right? Walking into an unknown storm is probably the worst thing you can do for a startup. I hope I'm wrong, but at least that was what I thought would be a responsible thing to say.
Yeah.
But
I know that like a lot of startups are like, yay, it's going to be now we're deregulating, but like that's actually not that great right now.
No.
Because there's no clear direction on what that means.
Exactly,
like,
which Pam brought up a good point, right?
Unregulated.
Yes.
What's that, Pam? Say again.
Regulating doesn't mean unregulated either. Like there's still like I feel like people forget those two words are not the same.
Yes.
Not you, of course, but
Yes.
like the people that are reacting to this is like just because there might be some loosening on some things does not mean you're gonna have no regulation.
Exactly.
Yeah. You said that in a webinar recently, Pam, and you reminded people. Yes, I listened to it. I don't listen to a lot of webinars, but yours I do. And you did tell people like, just because all of these uncertainties is happening doesn't mean that you don't have regulations you need to comply with. So the rules are still there. Tammy, what do you think?
I think you're exactly right in telling them to hold off. I think that I'm really glad I work for a US based company right now that is already established here. I mean, I could be working for somebody, in Europe and then they'd be looking for a way to offload me probably. Um, I also think that I work in the fraud space right now, which is also good for me.
Oh,
I gotta say the
sexy.
fintech sales, just like IPOs, right? Like that all follows the same curve. So it is going to be a tough row to hoe if you're selling something that is not really something that you can prove a ROI or some kind of a return on for the next year for fintechs, in my opinion, because the uncertainty leads them to, kind of paralysis in decision making, and if I was selling something like, core, or I was selling even digital banking, this year would look like I probably needed to make some adjustments. So that's just my
Yikes.
2 cents on that.
Yikes. What's on your radar, Tammy?
On my radar, I just had a really interesting conversation with the lady who does my hair this last week. And she knows I'm a banker, a lifelong banker, and she thinks of me as a banker. So she always asks me banking related things. And she happens to use Square for card processing. And she was complaining to me about the new charge that Square has just rolled out and made live, which is 15 cents per transaction on top of the already 3% on a transaction. So as you can imagine, that scales a lot higher for the smaller transaction people. When I have my hair done, it's a lot it's a lot more than her average person, right? Because I mean, this
It's
is not
amazing.
real, guys. um, so I'm not one of the ones that she's necessarily worried about, but like when she does a men's haircut, right, that's maybe $25 or something, and 15 cents on top of a 3% charge, that actually does impact her, right? Or I think about bakeries, or any of the, like, farmers market, where it's $3 I'm buying for a couple tomatoes. That's not a lot of cash that I'm expending, but 15 cents on as a fee on that plus the 3%, that's pretty high. So this specific individual was asking me, if I had thoughts about where maybe to go, and what else to maybe think about. She happens to be a Wells customer. She's been there for many years, and so I was encouraging her to maybe look at some local institutions and see if she were to tell them, hey, I'm looking at leaving Square, what could you offer me? Then there was potential there for her to find somebody who might be able to help her.
Think this
Potential.
potential. This
I don't
question,
know.
though, it does bring forth challenges that small businesses or even sole proprietors have, because the area that I live in, we do and have seen the brunt of some of the unfortunate incidents that has transpired the last 3 months. And, a lot of people that are out of job. One of my Uber driver told me recently, he said, when he goes to the lot and wait for the calls, he sees a lot more federal workers that are driving Uber because they have to make ends meet. And believe me, in this area, driving Uber is not going to be able to help you pay rent, because everything is so expensive. And so it's a stopgap measure. And it does bring forth the question on the impact, right, on not just individuals, but also small businesses that rely on the government, that rely on federal workers being in the office, spending, money for lunch, or, meeting friends up for happy hour after, or, basically anything, because everyone that I know in the area are changing their spending habits. We're tightening our belts. Speaking of getting hair done, Tammy, my hairdresser told me that they have way less appointments than they used to. The Uber driver, he does Uber Black, and he said he has way less people calling for reservations than he did before, right? So all of these have a residual impact, not just in the immediate DC area, but also, I would say, much further around the country.
I mean,
And
I
the
think
impact
about
of
those
the
federal workers, sorry, and they just lost really good benefits like health insurance. And health insurance went up I think my understanding is like 10% across the board all over the US this year. Like
Mm.
my heart goes out to them. I mean, we already have a bad healthcare system as it is. It's so reactive, but now like what are they going to do?
I don't know. And this is the one thing I don't know if too many people outside of the US understands, right? A job in the US is not just a job. A job in the US
Right.
also carries retirement benefits and health benefits. And I can afford to do what I do. And I often tell people because my husband has health insurance. If he doesn't,
Right.
it will break my bank just to get covered.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, it does with a lot of people. So, you know, it does hurt. It hurts a lot. And then with the tariffs, right? And then now it impacts the small business.
That was exactly what I was going to bring up, Theo, was
Yeah.
the tariffs and the impact on small businesses like hair people. All the chemicals she uses are all
Mhm.
imported, as you mentioned earlier. So yeah, that's going to impact her bottom line, and therefore she'll change, she'll change her pricing to accommodate that. And it's
You
just
pay
such
more.
a, interconnected. Yeah, it's an interconnected economy. No other way to describe it. So it's going to impact everybody.
And restaurants too, right? Restaurant business, all of
Mhm.
their things that they use, the silverware, the furniture, right? They tell me these are all from outside the US. You know, and there was an interesting analogy I heard from someone a few months ago when the whole question around tariffs first came up. And he said, look, if you truly do think that you want to bring some of these manufacturing jobs back to the US, think about the labor cost it would take to manufacture a plastic spoon.
Mhm.
Think about whether or not any of the Americans today, do they actually want to sit in a factory for 10 hours to make plastic spoons and make it so cheaply that people can afford to buy it so that you can be competitive in the marketplace? I mean, globalization is there for a reason. I'm not economics professor, but I do understand cost. and this is a very basic thing, input and output. And so it's the whole economics, you need to make it work. Otherwise, if no one wants to take it, no one wants to take the job because we kind of did deport a bunch of people. And you can't make it cost effective enough, then there's no market. What are you going to do?
There's also the environmental cost to consider with those types of
Totally.
things. And
Yes.
nobody wants that in their town too. It's like it's interesting.
Even if you remove OSHA from the equation, people,
Yeah.
you're still
Mhm.
right. Like, I don't want a plastics factory down the road from my house. That's
No.
terrible.
Right.
Yeah. We have a hard enough time with data centers, right? We say we don't want data centers,
Yeah.
and those are clean, let alone manufacturing facilities. Which brings me to Julie, something you wrote recently about Chime. Chime launched the instant loans. It's a micro lending product that gives people $500 instantly with a fixed interest rate of 29.76% and no credit checks.
Yeah.
Curious to know, do you think these products, this is way better than payday loan and loan sharks, don't get me wrong. Do you think these products are coming at a time because there's a need in the market for it? And the need is even more acute now than ever? Or do you think they have planned this all along?
I think so, especially for younger, the younger generation. A lot of them are gig workers and don't have much financial education, financial experience. And a lot of them, like, that's how they make things work, is not only paycheck to paycheck, but this is the buy now, pay later generation also. And so they're used to having what they want when they want it, but not necessarily paying for that thing when they hit the, buy now or transaction button. So I think it is a huge issue, that they're so used to that instant gratification. And so they need that instant loan, that instant money, when they don't necessarily have it saved. I don't have any stats around it, unfortunately, but I've seen a lot. I mean, yeah, what is the other one? Cash App is also another one of those. So I think that Chime's move was to kind of compete with Cash App in that sense, because they've seen that Cash App has had major success with their kind of instant loans on that front. So, but Chime's been busy. They've had a couple other launches recently too. Of course, I can't think of them right now. But, But they're
they're
ramping up,
busy.
I think, for their maybe IPO, but maybe not now. But last week I was like, man, they're busy. They've had a handful of launches just even this year that they've been keeping up in the industry with. But yeah, so I think part of it is to keep up with competitors, but also, the demand is there for sure. Oh, they launched a financial wellness suite called Workplace. That was the one I was thinking of. Okay.
Yes, I did remember that one.
That reminds me, like in this kind of environment right now, what do you guys think are fintech's best opportunities
Hmm.
that they can take advantage of? Like it's chaos, it's
Mhm.
uncertainty, it's I was just trying to kind of all of a sudden flip it on its side and like if I owned a fintech, like what would I try to what new value proposition would I try to come up with right now?
You might
Um,
find some bargains to buy, right? Like, I mean, if
yeah,
you're in if you're in a good
that's true.
cash position and you see somebody's
Yeah.
like in distress, like it might be a good way to like combine some things. But I don't know. That's a great question. I think we I think we have a impending like CRE doom like in the future, probably,
Hmm.
right? And so like I always
Yeah.
think out
Yeah.
there, I'm like, how are we going to deal with that when and if that ever really, comes to fruition? But it feels like that's just like we keep pushing out the horizon a little bit, but it's going to happen, right? So
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I
I
don't
think
know.
crypto is kind of rising up. Of course, it's risky as well, but with regulations, I mean, like you said, we were talking about deregulation earlier, and maybe it's not the wisest thing, but if you're into taking risk, I think that crypto, it's pretty green field still and could be interesting.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about stable coins too, right, Julie?
I know, of course, I want to talk about stablecoins. I like talking about stablecoins, but no one wants to hear about stablecoins, so I don't get to talk about them
No,
very much.
talk.
So.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I
Well,
don't
so
know enough about stablecoins, so talk about it, please.
Well, yeah, so the SEC recently released its official like stance on stablecoins, which is huge because like in years past, companies like Coinbase, which has always been, and like Ripple, they've always been tried to be like above board, just like operating within regulations. But the SEC has just been like, um, you know,
Nothing
really
kind.
coming down on them for not operating in a way that they're supposed to be. And they've always said, tell us the rules
Hmm.
and we will comply. But then the SEC has not come out with any rules. Like, how frustrating as a fintech. So finally, the SEC has come out with an official stance on stablecoins, at least. So that's exciting. So they have decided that certain types of stablecoins are not considered securities under US law. So it's official now
Hmm.
that that is their stance, so that companies can finally operate in that area. So there are some, I guess, kind of guidelines. They have to be pegged relative to the U.S. dollar, so they do have to actually be stable. They have to be true to their name, and they can only be for making payments, like transacting and storing value, and they can't actually be used like as speculative investments. So as you would think about like Bitcoin or something like that, which generally stablecoins are not, but they can't market it as an investment opportunity either. So I thought that was exciting. It kind of opens up, some space there for people to operate in. Some good news.
Julie, do you think
Nice.
that financial institutions will want to offer? I mean, I know in the past they definitely have wanted to offer Bitcoin specifically. That's one that I was associated with in one of my previous companies. But do you think there's a market there for stablecoins? Because like we were talking about, there's less known about them that people don't really
Mhm.
understand. So do you think it's something that you've heard a lot of financial institutions be interested in?
Yeah, I mean, JP Morgan has its stable coin and it's risen, like it's done pretty well. And that was a while ago. I'm not sure when they launched their stable coin. And internationally, I know over in Europe, there are definitely a handful of banks that have their stable coins. I think when banks see stable coins, like they turn the other way in fear because they're not regulated and banks don't have any like don't have any internal
Hmm.
regulation or policies around it. And so that is a scary place to operate. But now that the SEC has come out with its official guidance, banks can now, gather around and say like, okay, what can we do with this? Like who within our team can we have to check this to make our own stablecoin. So I think that there is opportunity there, certainly for banks, but it can also be a little bit scary for banks too, because stablecoins are cheaper. Yeah, you don't. They're cheaper to send and receive money, and banks don't get their cut. So that loss, I think, is a little bit scary for banks. So maybe it's that if you can't beat them, join them mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to add that Tammy, on the bank tech side, have been hearing from banks asking us what companies we've met in the stablecoin space already. Really, as of early on in the year, like before this.
The cat wants to talk.
The cat is very anxious. Yeah, so we've been hearing from banks for the last few months about stablecoin, about crypto, about whether the aforementioned company that you worked for was going to get back into the space and help banks offer, Bitcoin wallets. But so we've been looking into the space. Like we've heard from several bankers. It's been a hot topic. It's been on many panels, and I feel like a lot of the conferences and events are also coming back into like, yes, we're going to go back to like the crypto hype cycle. Hopefully it's not going to be in that same vein. But yes, we've definitely been hearing from lots of banks that are interested, and I think just learning more at the moment. So I don't know if necessarily like actively launching products, which I have, although I have seen a few that have done so already. Yeah, I think it's more like we want to know what this is. We're going to have customers ask us about it, tell us what we should do type mentality. So I guess that was still like a positive signaling that banks are interested again. And I would say they were interested, a few years ago as well during kind of the crypto boom. But again, like seeing no real regulatory guidance around it, it was a tough space to be in.
Definitely.
Do you guys think that with the uncertainty in the market right now, I'm going to call that uncertainty in the market right now, that consumers are more likely to think, oh, maybe I should reinvest, maybe I should invest, pull out of some of my stuff out of the market and learn about and or invest in stablecoin or crypto?
I think people are probably going to have to think about how to put food on the table and pay for the
Yeah.
rent. I just being realistic, and probably some of that is because where I am, it's the uncertainty is scary, and so it's always the case, isn't it? For those who have extras, then we'll think about how do we take advantage of the down market and capitalize on it. And then for the rest is like, okay, how do I make my ends meet so that I can pay my bills next month? One of the things that we didn't talk about also is the cutback on social programs, right? A lot of the SNAP, the low cost meals or free lunch meals, a lot of those things are going to get cut. Even in our school district, I think all the after school programs next year for the middle school are going to be cut. And after school program, middle school, is like, free daycare, essentially. Again, for those who are outside of the US, yes, school is a place to learn, but school is also a daycare facility because childcare is so expensive everywhere else. So when you start cutting off hours after school, parents need to scramble to find a place to put their children. So everything adds to it. And for those who are fortunate to have extra, yes, absolutely, they will be looking for opportunities such as crypto to invest in. And this just came in, a blockchain company called CAP. They just raised $11 million from Franklin Templeton to launch interest-bearing stablecoin. This is pretty new. So there's definitely a market to be had for those brave souls who want to jump in. Stablecoin is not new, right? It's been around outside of the US in particular. So it is interesting. It is about time that it comes here. And Julie, to your point, I think it's good that at least the uncertainty is gone because no one wants to operate in a market where you don't know when you get into trouble until you get sued.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it happened plenty of times. Poor Coinbase and Ripple, they're just trying to survive. But
yeah, right. And so that is interesting. I don't know. Anyone has a crystal ball on what's going to happen in a month?
What about gold? Do you think people are going to start like buying
Oh,
bars of gold from Costco again? That's what I see.
I was
Gold
wondering
is
about the same
yes.
thing,
For
Julie.
you?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, my parents are all up in that. I mean, my dad passed, but yes,
People, every brown
yeah.
person ever
I mean,
will get some more gold.
it's an
I know.
Asian thing.
Is it? I
I
didn't know
have,
that.
so what am I? I'm 56 and I have friends who have started to buy gold bars and put them in their
So,
safes.
Yeah.
It's so
I have,
amazing. Like in Indian culture, I'm like my parents have been passing down gold. Like I have gold jewelry that I got, that from my mom, and my sister-in-law does, and my mom does, and we have generations of gold, because it is a supposedly stable,
yeah,
investment.
that's awesome. I love that.
it
And
is
it has a
actually
sentimental
stable.
value too, so you got that going.
All right, so off to
Let me
Costco to
ask
buy
a
gold.
question for the group.
Yeah.
So, do you guys think that now that, because Millicent, you were saying, your 20-year-old won't be able to buy a house for a long time, right? And I haven't even thought about that for my teenager, but I do think about it in the context of my nieces and nephews who are,
Mhm.
anywhere from literally teenagers all the way up into their 40s, right? Big family. But I do think about these are people who have lived through, we're coming up on what, 3 or 4 recessions, right? So like we had, I mean, a lot of recessions in their lifetime,
Yeah.
right? Plus, they're really, not viable to be able to necessarily make big purchases like a home, right? I've talked to
Mhm.
several of my nieces about this specific thing where, when am I ever going to be able to afford a home? And then on top of that, the cost of childcare compounded by, compression in the cost of, our cost of living versus our wages. So
Mhm.
what I think is that we're just going to continue to see the birth rate like trickle
Hmm.
down, like
Mhm.
so. That's my
Yep.
prediction. That is and I don't think you need a crystal ball to be able to look at that and go, that's a cause and effect, right?
It
Because
is,
what are you
and
going to do?
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, and that which means that it's going to get harder and harder to take care of the older adults because when you
Mm.
have less
Mhm.
younger generation, which right now they already bear the burden of taking care of their parents and grandparents, and when you have less and less of that, who's going to take care of people as they get older? We call it the caregiving cliff. There's a term for it.
Oh,
When the study started in ARP quite a while ago, I remember when I left, that was one big topic that they were looking at is the caregiving cliff. When that birth rate, precisely to your point, Tammy, it drops off. We don't already have enough caregivers to take care of older adults, and then in the future,
Mhm.
not just your loved ones, but also paid caregivers. Nobody wants to do that. It's a tough job,
No,
Mhm.
and
it is.
Mhm.
it's not rewarding. It doesn't pay well, and so which was why we had actually been looking at robotics and using AI technology to help with some of the daily activities, daily
wow.
care of living, but it's immensely difficult. Think of the pure act of just lifting up something using your fingers. That's something that's really hard for a robot to grasp.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And not to mention, you can't really use robot to replace a person. You want a person to be there. So there's a lot of social challenges that comes with the situation that we're in right now. I'll call it the situation. But
And Theo, I was thinking for us, like for people who had their kids later, right? Because we were
Mhm.
focused on our careers, right? So I had my daughter when I was 36, right?
Mhm.
Me
Me
too.
too.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, yeah. And so I'm considered geriatric mom, all that.
Mhm.
That was wonderful. But the fact is
It's
that
an
I'm gonna
exclusive
be
club.
older. Right, exactly. And
Exclusive
so
club,
then,
Tammy, you and I.
so she's going to be in that generation where she's just getting on her feet and like I'm going to
Mhm.
be
Oh
needing
yeah.
help potentially,
Mhm.
and she's an only
Mhm.
child and that's another compounding factor, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's a lot.
Yes. And yes. And you need to think
Oh,
about
Theo,
your
you
mom
know that
too.
well.
I know that really
Yeah.
well. And Tammy, you have, right, when you start
I am not
thinking
an
about
only
up,
child, but I'm the baby. Yep,
And
I'm the baby, so yeah, there's a lot of that. And yes, so my mom's 87. I was the baby of a big family. She had me when she was older, and yeah, I happen to be in one of those sandwich situations where you're raising your own kid, but your parents need help too, and
Oh,
they're
yeah.
older, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting that if you had your kids when you were 20, by the time your parents need help, maybe your kids are out of the house and you're fine, in sort of like the traditional, atomic family that we think of, in the 50s. But that's not the reality anymore. If you focus on your career first, you have your kids later, then that's happening at the same time as your parents potentially needing help. So
absolutely.
it's an interesting thing to think about.
That's been my crusade for the last 10 years. And I've been screaming on the top of the hill, hey, we need something. I've been laughed out from plenty of situations as well. So eventually we'll get it. And typically, the funny thing is, typically are women who get this problem. And I think it's because typically
100%.
women are
100.
the ones who have to bear the burden of
Yeah.
figuring all these out. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I told this story before. I got told by a banker, a guy, who said we don't do old people. I got laughed at by a mutual friend of ours, actually, that says there's no business in that. We can't make the economics work. It's a challenge, but we're not interested. I've got turned down many, many times. Eventually, we'll get there, I think. But until then, how do we wrap up? Any good news to share? Where are we going to be next? Pam, you're flying all over the place.
I'll be in New York FinTech Week, and then I'll be at our Bank Tech Summit in Chicago. And then literally that same week, I hope to see all of you guys in San Diego.
Yay.
That's good
Millicent.
news. Those are 3 places I love, so that's great news.
I do love San Diego, and our friend Tiffany will be there. Melissa, what about you? What's up with you? We hadn't talked in a while.
I know. I guess the biggest thing that's new for me is I just got a new board role. I can't announce the bank because they're public and it's not going to be official till June. But I think when I've talked to you guys about board roles, one of the things I've learned is it's about networking on a repetitive basis. And I had been talking to this woman literally for 2 years, and she had said from the beginning, we don't have anything probably for several years. And I was like, that's okay, but I just love this woman. She's just super interesting, super smart, total go-getter. And so we just happened to stay in touch. And then in November, she was like, hey, I want you to start meeting some of our board members. And then literally all of a sudden in January, they're like, someone's rolling off, we have an opening. And I was like, I'm just so thrilled. So I'm excited about that because they're a good board. The people are amazing and the bank's amazing. And I'm just excited about that. So that's the little piece of good news for me.
Congratulations. That's exciting.
Yay, that's awesome.
Thank you.
And for those who
Yes.
are listening, if you're interested in how you can begin your journey to be a board member, reach out to Millicent. And Julie, what about you? What's next?
I know. Well, no one's having me be on their board, but that's okay. I talked to Millicent at FinTech Fall, and I asked her about, starting board service. So I did have a couple initial conversations. So that has led to some things. So that's been interesting.
Yeah, let's talk again.
Yeah, let's talk again. I can figure out some more hacks. Yeah, I'm just focused on FinTech Spring and just trying to figure out what the topics are because everything is so volatile at the moment. So, what's good one week is no good the next week, obviously, as this week has shown. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just keeping up.
Keeping up is actually not a bad thing. It takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
But I do look forward to seeing you. Tammy, what about you?
I would say personally, things are great. My daughter's finishing her freshman year. I've been around a little bit less travel this calendar year, so I've been able to do a few more things at her school, which I love. I mean, there's some stuff that I love doing like that, volunteer stuff. I get to speak at her school this coming week, like a career mom thing, which I'm totally down with. Yeah. I love the idea of talking to young women and inspiring them to, do stuff that maybe they wouldn't be comfortable with otherwise, That's sort of I would say my passion that's beyond fintech stuff. It's more like I've talked to you before about that, Theo, like the idea of being an auntie. And Pam, you've probably heard me use that term before too, like just that pure encouragement where, the mom has a lot of jobs, right? Like the mom has to be like, you really want to do that? Do you really want an art degree? Are you sure that's going to make you any money? But the auntie can just be like, woohoo, we're going to do this and you're going to be awesome. And I love the role of being an aunt. I have a lot of personal nieces and nephews, but I think in career and mentoring, there's something really pure and good about that. And so I'm really excited about talking at the high school this week. And work-wise, things are good. I like the folks I work with. I just started a webinar series for them, so you'll probably see some of that come across LinkedIn. So that's fun. I like this kind of interaction. If I'm not in person with people, that's another fun way to do that. So anyway, yeah, things are good. I mean, personally.
Well, hopefully we'll see you in person one time soon. And
Yes.
and then for me, I will be in New York May 2nd. There is an event called Blooming Day. And I am going to be able to check off one item on my list since Chelsea Clinton will be headlining the event.
Yay!
So
Oh,
yes, dream checked. And then afterwards, I'll be in SAS Innovate in Orlando doing my book signing, and then I'll join you in Finovate Spring the same week in San Diego, Julie and Pam. So I look forward to it. That would be a great start, something to look forward to.
Yes.
If we may indulge in a little bit of goodness in the meantime. But until then, thank you so much, ladies, for joining me. And for those on the show, thank you for listening to our chit chat. This is basically how it goes every time when we get together. Well, with a few drinks, it might actually go a little different direction. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And we look forward to talking to you all next week on a new episode of One Vision. Until then, be well and be good.